Hi friends! I have here several kinds of fats, but only one of them contains an essential nutrient that's missing in the standard American diet. However, all of them are great sources of energy. However, when you eat all of these, they will all spike your blood sugar when you eat them with carbohydrates, even though there's no carbohydrates in any of these fats. Can you guess which one is full of an essential nutrient that is missing in your diet? 95% of American children and 70% of American adults are missing an essential fat in their diet. Americans are also eating too much of the wrong types of fats because many are confused listening to diet camps telling us to eat this and not that. Fats have been one of the most misunderstood parts of nutrition for decades. Today, we'll talk about the real story about fats, the history, the science, the myths, and the truths. We'll talk about how fats really affects your health, your hormones, and your waistline, and how to eat so that you can get out of that deficiency list. Fun fact number 1, most people eat about 30% of their calories from fat, even when you are on a diet. This means that it's super hard for the palate to stay on a low-fat diet. Fun fact number 2, did you know that just by changing the quality of the fat, you can actually reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease, even if you don't lower the overall fat intake in your diet? Now, on this table, I have good fats and bad fats. And I wish I can give you all the information you need about fats in a 10-minute video, but I can't because fat biochemistry is super complex. Because there are roughly over 70 different types of fats in your food that affect your metabolism and your immunity in different ways. Now, just studying fats and lipids that swim in your blood is a medical subspecialty. They are called lipidologists. So this video is already as brief as I can get it. Now, why do we even need lipidologists? Simply because there are chemotherapies that can change the lipids and cholesterol in your blood. Statins, PCSK9 inhibitors, bile acid sequestrants, ezetimibe, fibrates, and omega-3 fatty acid derivatives are just a few categories of the agents that millions of people take to change their blood lipid biochemistry. If you don't eat any food, you will still have measurable levels of lipids and cholesterol in your blood. And in fact, depending on how long you have been fasting, your cholesterol may even be higher. And this is because when you don't eat, your body destroys its own fat tissue for energy, and its clearance of fats will slow down. And when you break your fast the wrong way, you can actually spike your blood sugars too. Like I said, the biochemistry of fats are super complex, but the fundamental concepts are so simple. So let's first define some basic terms. Number 1 are triglycerides. They are the most abundant type of fat in your body. You may have had a triglyceride level recently on your blood labs. They are the primary fat used to store energy and fat tissue. They are also fuel for your body during fasting and exercise. They are the primary fuel for your heart muscle. Overeating any type of calories, whether it's from fat, sugar, protein, or alcohol, will be stored as triglycerides. The problem is when you have elevated amounts of triglyceride, they become a poison or a weed, and then they become stored in places other than fat tissue, like your pancreas, liver, muscle, and brain. Normally, your body breaks up one triglyceride molecule into 3 fatty acids, which can be used for energy. And these fatty acids are called free fatty acids. Now, since fat doesn't dissolve in water and your blood is mostly water, you always need a transportation protein to move any of the fats around in your blood. Now, every single cell in your body is surrounded by a membrane or a bag that prevents water from leaking. And biologically, since fat and water, they don't mix, all of your cell membrane has fats. They are called phospholipids. These are special because these fats have to like water and then hate water all at the same time. And this is the beauty of how we were created. A phosphate group is attached to a fatty acid, which now makes them soluble in water. As a unique molecule, they can now help proteins transport your fats around your body. They also help you absorb the fats that you eat. And that's why you have phospholipids in your bile. Another type of fat are called sterols, the most famous of which is cholesterol. But these fats also make steroid hormones like cortisol, sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen, and a critical molecule called vitamin D. Sterols are also found in your cell membrane so that they can make your membranes flexible like rubber. Now, fun fact, cholesterol is also in bile. That's how your body gets rid of cholesterol. So if you want to lower your cholesterol, then you have to get rid of your bile. So that means you have to poop more because that's how you get rid of your bile. Now, the last category of fats are called lipoproteins. They're basically lipids with proteins together that help to transport your fats in your blood, such as cholesterol. Now, this is measurable on your blood test. You have an LDL or low density lipoprotein cholesterol, or an HDL value, high density lipoprotein cholesterol. You can think of them as submarine ships shuttling your cholesterol. Now, lipoproteins are how many of your fats, whether they're triglycerides or cholesterol, travel in your bloodstream. And these are also the markers that have been associated with health and disease. Have you heard of lipoprotein a? Roughly about 30% of the population have an elevated lipoprotein a level. Africans and African Americans are at higher risk of having an elevated lipoprotein a level. Now, this is basically dictated by your genes, and you can inherit this gene from one or both parents. The problem is lipoprotein a promotes plaque formation in your arteries. In other words, they block your plumbing and can choke off your blood supply to critical parts of your body. Actually, come to think of it, there's really no part of your body that isn't critical, and therefore they all need blood. And the reason why it can do this is because the molecule contains oxidized phospholipids, which are highly inflammatory. So those with an elevated lipoprotein a level are at a higher risk of having a heart attack, a stroke, or a bad aortic valve called aortic stenosis. They can also have severe peripheral arterial disease. That can lead to gangrene and kidney failure. Now, I'm telling you all this not to scare you, but because this is the reality of life. This is what we all have to deal with. So if you don't want these complications, then you have to do something about it. A level above 50 milligrams per deciliter significantly raises your risk of disease. And this is why it's very important that you get this test done. And in fact, it's recommended that everybody gets a lipoprotein a level checked at least once in your life. Now, this is a genetic disease. So if you don't have an elevated level, you're unlikely going to need a repeat test. Now, we know that genes, they will affect certain lipoprotein cholesterol levels. And if you inherit bad cholesterol levels, then you should be followed by a cardiologist, maybe even a lipidologist, and also change your diet. For the rest of us, if we don't already have a cardiologist, well, if you don't change your diet, you may also need one. And some of my good friends, they are cardiologists, but I really don't want to have to see them professionally. And that's why it's super important that I eat the right types of fats and avoid the wrong types of fats. So I'm not going to eat all these fats that you see on this table. Now, many lipoprotein levels will indeed change through your diet and lifestyle. So no matter your genes, improving your lipoprotein levels through your diet can significantly reduce your risk of many diseases, including cardiovascular diseases, and improve your blood lipid profile. And ultimately, if you don't have blood supply, well, you're going to get a lot of diseases, including infectious diseases and inflammation. And when you correct that and get better lipoprotein levels, you basically improve your blood flow and you improve your quality of life, because blood is life. Hence, America has been trying to teach for decades how to eat fats and picking the right types of foods. And you can look around and you know that we're doing a crappy job because the public health education has been left to people trying to sell us their crappy processed foods or their drugs. Now, I used to work with a colleague who would eat a donut every day and then make up for it with a statin in the afternoon. Companies, they've been doing a great job enabling us to eat poor quality fats. Check out the stock prices of Merck, Pfizer, Hershey's, Pepsi Cola. Did you know that there's a handful of companies that control 80% of our groceries in the supermarket? Now, in the past, companies would just advertise on TV and magazines, but hardly anybody reads those anymore. So now the marketing is on social media through influencers who support or oppose their products. And it's pretty confusing. But I was pretty lucky because I have a bachelor's in biochemistry. I went to medical school and I practiced over 25 years as a medical doctor, and I see the devastating consequences of American marketing. So if you don't eat the right fats and avoid the wrong ones, well, you may not get a second chance like millions of our fellow Americans every year, or you may be lucky enough to get a second chance and meet an infectious disease doctor. Because when you don't get the blood flow right, you will get multiple infectious diseases. Now, this channel was created to help people not to do that because there aren't that many infectious disease doctors around the country. Have you ever heard of the Dietary Guidelines of America? Like I said, the PR department needs to be upgraded. Nobody knows these guidelines exist, and it is worth reading at least one time to give you the basic principles of what I am teaching on my channel. Now, frankly, I don't think they do any PR for it. Unlike the low-fat SnackWell craze, remember that? That taught me to look for low-fat foods, and I happily ate those SnackWells, even though they didn't taste that great. But I figured they must be good for me if they're advertising it. But it turns out that SnackWells actually had more calories from all the extra added sugars than the ones with fat. It was more like a bait and switch campaign, and it just made people fatter. Now remember, you can convert any carbohydrate or protein into fat yourself. And unfortunately, the snacks kind of fell into the USDA's first food pyramid where they labeled cereal as a preferred food. Now, to their credit, they did tell us to use sugar sparingly, which most people ignored because it tasted more like bread. Now, the American Heart Association, they didn't help when they started selling healthy labels to sugary cereals. Maybe you've eaten them. Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, Fruity Marshmallow Krispies, and low-fat Pop-Tarts. I ate them. Per Marion Nestle, that was probably the most widely distributed and best recognized nutrition education device that have been ever produced in this country. And now we have people telling us to do the opposite. Go low carb and just eat fat. Now, intuitively, I think we all know extreme diets, they make no sense. So who's right? The bottom line is we all have to eat some form of energy molecule, and you're either going to eat it in carbohydrates or fats or both. But the thing is, you're going to have to choose because your body, they can't metabolize both at the same time well. So if you're going to eat a lot of fats, then you have to avoid carbohydrates. Otherwise, you're just going to get bigger. That's pretty much a standard American diet. Now, if your diet is low in fats, then you're going to have to eat a high carbohydrate diet because you're going to run out of energy on a low carbohydrate, low fat diet. Pretty much, that's almost like a starvation diet. But I had mentioned in the beginning, a low-fat diet is hard to sustain because most people's palates naturally gravitate towards eating 30% fat no matter what you're eating in your diet. So this is why it's crucial for all of us to learn good fats from bad fats. So why is fat so controversial? It's because most people think of fat as an energy molecule, but it actually has multiple roles and are powerful signaling molecules. Do you remember how I mentioned cholesterol is a backbone for hormones like cortisol, testosterone, and estrogen? Well, other fats also regulate your appetite, growth, mood, memory, inflammation, immunity, and pain response. So getting the amount of fat and the type of fat correctly in your diet is vital for your health and your life. Now, can you think of an ancient culture that eats a lot of fat? And by the way, what do you think is a lot of fat? Eating 30%, 50%, 75%? If you're on a ketogenic diet, your diet should be at least 70% fat, or you aren't really on a ketogenic diet. There is no ancient culture who eats 70% fat in their diet or a ketogenic diet. It's an abnormal diet. It literally requires you to monitor your ketones through your breath, through your blood, or through your urine. How is that natural? So this could have only happened after we developed chemistry tests to allow people to do this. This is a modern food. It's a modern diet. Show me a modern food that has allowed people to live longer than ancient cultures. Yeah, it just doesn't exist. However, we know how to shorten life. And number one, adopt the standard American diet or the SAD diet that's filled with both fats and carbohydrates. We are ranked number 49 in longevity. We may be the richest country in the world when it comes to GDP, but we're in a massive amount of debt, not only financially, but in terms of our health. Now, I believe most social media influencers understand that when you're eating a high fat and high carbohydrate diet, you just gain fat. Now, do you know why when you eat both of them together that this results in weight gain? Now, this is where most social media influencers don't get the science quite right. Fat inhibits the metabolism of carbohydrates. So when you eat fat, you make your body more insulin resistant, which then increases your blood sugar. But you only see that increase when you eat carbohydrates. So that when you eat carbohydrates, you get an abnormally higher increase in insulin response. And if you want to gain weight, then insulin is a growth hormone to have in high amounts. Now, this is not new science. It's been worked out for over a century. But the real answer isn't as simple as avoid fat or eat mostly fat. Both diets are extremely hard to do because they both don't taste so good. And ideally, the nutrition facts label should help you choose, but it's incomplete. Now, it will tell you total fat. This one has 17 grams of fat. And then it also tells you saturated fat. This one has 15 grams of saturated fat. And it tells you trans fat, which is 0. But as you can tell, the math just doesn't add up here because there's more fats than what's labeled. And when it comes to weight gain, even though every fat is equal in potential energy or stored energy, in reality, not every fat has the same effects on your body, even if you eat the exact same fats in the exact same amounts. Now, if you look at these bottles, which one do you think has saturated fat? Now, this is butter. This is coconut fat. This is sesame oil. This is olive oil, and this is fish oil. So all of these have saturated fat, except for this one, because the saturated fat was taken out of the fish, and this is basically a supplement. However, the solid fats like butter and coconut oil has more saturated fat, and this is why it's solid at room temperature. Now, even the olive oil has saturated fat, and if you read the label, it has roughly about 2 grams. Now, best way to test it is to put all of these in the refrigerator because saturated fat will solidify in the cold. Now, remember how I mentioned that eating fat inhibits glucose metabolism? Eating saturated fat is worse because it's been directly correlated with the buildup of fat in the pancreas, the liver, and the muscle. These are your 3 metabolic organs. They are not fat storage organs. So fat doesn't belong in these organs, but they help you metabolize fats and metabolize carbohydrates. And hence, if you destroy the organs that are supposed to keep you healthy, these critical organs, then you're going to lose your ability to burn your own fats and to process the carbohydrates that you eat. Saturated fat has been shown to be a mitochondrial toxin. So when you poison your mitochondria, you slow down your metabolism. This also inhibits your ability to burn fat, to process glucose, and as a result, it makes you store more fat. So you will get bigger and bigger if you eat more saturated fat. You're going to grow more plaque in your arteries, and you're going to reduce your immunity. Now, keep in mind that you don't have to eat saturated fat to get saturated fat. You have the ability to make your own saturated fat or triglycerides, which can be made from any excess calories that you eat, whether it's from alcohol, from fat, from carbohydrates, or from proteins. And the quickest way to poison your metabolism and to gain weight is to make your body make more fat. That's with ultra-processed foods, which gives you more pure proteins, more pure carbohydrates, and more pure fats. And when you have access to those nutrients faster, well, you overwhelm your metabolism, and your body can't have these things floating in your bloodstream all the time. So it's going to rapidly convert them and store them as fat. But if you keep your fat in a matrix of a whole food, so eating the olive instead of the olive oil, eating the avocado instead of the avocado oil, eating whole wheat instead of bread, a whole apple instead of apple juice, then you will change how quickly your body sees these caloric nutrients, whether they're fat, carbohydrates, or proteins, which will then allow your body time to metabolize the calories that you're eating. This is kind of like the I Love Lucy episode where she's trying to pack chocolates in a chocolate box. But these chocolates are coming on a conveyor belt. And then in the beginning, it's at a reasonable pace. But then the conveyor belt all of a sudden speeds up. There are so many chocolates that go by so fast that she has to eat some of them. And yet so many still spill on the floor. Now the chocolate represents the food that you're eating, whether it's fat or proteins or carbohydrates. So when you eat a lot of fat at a high pace, the conveyor belt speeding up, then you challenge your metabolism. But if you slow down the conveyor belt, then potentially you're giving your body a chance to catch up. And how do you slow it down? Well, that's the role of fiber. Fiber slows down your body's ability to access the calories, whether it's fat, carbohydrates, or proteins. So even if you eat an equivalent amount of fat calories from whole nuts, you actually don't gain all that weight. And in fact, when you eat whole nuts with the fiber food matrix, don't ground it up and purify it and eat it in powder, then you can lose weight because you don't actually absorb all that fat. A lot of that fiber, along with the fat, gets flushed down in the toilet. But when you ultra process the fats from any of these bottles, you efficiently and easily absorb the fatty calories when you eat them. But you're not going to eat loads of fish oil, right? And remember, besides this bottle, everything else has a metabolic toxin, saturated fat. This bottle contains an essential fat called omega-3 fatty acids, which is a polyunsaturated fat that is an essential nutrient. These other containers, they don't have omega-3 fats. Now, when it comes to our food labels, dietary fats are categorized into several types, each with unique effects in your body. There are saturated fats and unsaturated fats, which are further broken down into monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. Now, only the polyunsaturated fats are essential fats in your diet. But in reality, your diet also has other fats like cholesterol, medium-chain triglycerides, and trans fats. So which fats should you eat? First, let's talk about the trans fats that everybody agrees is bad. Trans fats can be naturally found in certain foods, but they are also a chemically created fat in processed foods. Now, dairy products, milk, butter, cheese, yogurt, and meats like beef, lamb, veal, they all have a little bit of trans fats. The primary trans fats in these products are vicinic acid and conjugated linoleic acid. Your body can't process trans fats, whether it's natural or man-made, unlike other dietary fats. But the majority of trans fats are hidden in processed foods as partially hydrogenated oils. They are put there to change the texture and to preserve your food because they save money. But the cost is passed on to your healthcare. Heard of the Forever Twinkie? I had a lot of Twinkies as a child, and I probably still have those trans fats in me. It got a reputation of never rotting because bacteria can't metabolize trans fats. It turns out that fungi have an incredible power to clear man-made trash on Earth, including trans fats. Now, in nature, trans fats are in animal products made from ruminants like cows and goats. And the problem with trans fats is not only does it provide less energy, but more importantly, they increase insulin resistance, increase oxidative stress, and they increase inflammation. They will raise your LDL cholesterol and lower your HDL cholesterol. And trans fats, they're also strongly linked to heart disease. So, where do you find trans fats? Well, fried foods like French fries, fried chicken, because the oils that they use for deep frying may be reused over and over and over. And heat turns fats into trans fats. Now, when you buy baked goods such as a donut, pastry, or cake, or pie crust, or biscuits, or cookies, they may also have partially hydrogenated oils. They're definitely cheaper than butter. And if they have those partially hydrogenated oils, that's a trans fat. Remember margarine and shortening? Well, it was once sold to us as a healthier alternative to butter, and that is not true. Read your labels. You will notice that crackers, microwave popcorn, and certain types of chips may still have trans fats. And frozen foods, they're not better. Trans fats may be hidden in your favorite frozen pizzas and frozen entrees. In essence, you have to be suspicious of anything artificial that man is creating, whether that's trans fat or an artificial sugar. In 2020, the U.S. banned industrial trans fats in processed foods, but they still sneak in trans fats by dividing up the servings. The U.S. FDA labeling rules allow products to be labeled as 0 grams of trans fats if they contain less than 0.5 grams of trans fats per serving. Now, how would you cheat if your product still has trans fats? Yeah, make the serving smaller. So that's what they do. Manufacturers artificially make serving sizes smaller so that they can put 0 trans fats on their labels. So I would like to know how much trans fats are in the entire product, not just per serving. Because if you eat multiple servings, even if it has 0.4999 amounts, that can add up significantly. So when you eat this fat, you're getting some trans fats. But conjugated linoleic acid and vicinic acid, they're not chemically created trans fats. But unfortunately, metabolically, they behave similarly. Now, whether you chemically create trans fats or it's all natural, they will contribute to your overall trans fat intake. And processed foods with shortening or fully hydrogenated oil blends or non-hydrogenated oils may still have residual trans fats. And hence that's another reason why packaged baked goods, microwave popcorn, ready-to-eat frostings, and frozen pizzas and pies should all be avoided. So let's talk about polyunsaturated fats that you have to eat to survive. There are two essential fats, omega-3 and omega-6 fats, that you're probably getting an A+ in omega-6 intake, as that is found abundantly in vegetable oils. Americans are severely deficient in omega-3 fats, which is in this bottle. Omega-3s play a vital role in your brain function, inflammation regulation, and your overall health. Now, as a kid, my mom had us eating a ton of seafood because she said it was good for my brain development. And she actually literally told me it would make me smarter. Now, I thought she made it up, but it turns out she was right. Her grandmother taught her that. And my great-grandmother, she would have lived in the 1800s. There's actually several types of omega-3 fatty acids. Alpha-linolenic acid are found in plants. Eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA, they're found in marine sources. And DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, they're also found in marine sources. Now, these omega-3 fats are vital for your brain and retinal health.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
So if your diet isn't full of nuts and seeds and marine life, then you need to supplement with fish, krill, or algae oil. Now, many people don't believe that eating whole plants like walnuts and flax seeds are a good way to get your omega-3 fats. And the reason is because your body has to convert ALA from plants into EPA and DHA. Now, this conversion is actually very inefficient. Only 5 to 10% of your ALA is converted to EPA and less than 0.5 to 4% to DHA. And when you increase more omega-6 fatty acids, this actually interferes with your conversion process. And thus, it's helpful to lower your omega-6 fats in seed oils. The omega-3 and omega-6 fats, they are essential. And that's why they're added to baby formulas and IV nutrition called TPN, which only medical doctors can prescribe. Now, in this bottle, I have purified DHA and EPA, and you can either eat them directly from the source, or you can get them purified out as fish oil or algae oil. Fish actually don't make their own omega-3s. They eat the algae. That's how they get it. And it's important to have omega-3s because they reduce inflammation, and they are critical for your brain health, for healing your tissue, and basically for you to be healthy. And this includes your liver, as it is the #1 metabolic organ to detoxify so that other organs can thrive. And the first metabolic marker that your liver is pretty sick is basically prediabetes, elevated insulin, or insulin resistance. So if you want to get healthy, you have to get your liver healthy. And this is why it's essential to get your fat right. Many people don't realize that the liver is also responsible to clean your body of excess fats. And it literally helps you poop it out. That's the job of the bile, which your liver makes. So now let's talk about cholesterol, which is more controversial than omega-3 fats. And if you want to learn more about cholesterol, watch the next video.